What I will be talking about is how do we remove that fear? How do we enable people to start thinking about maybe deserving to have fun at work? Right? How do we make the new things less scary to people? So, a disclaimer. There's a lot of talk going on in the community and at conferences about science and about explanations, about reasoning, about heuristics and concepts, etc. I'll be talking about people and people only today. It's the first value in the Agile Manifesto. I promised this morning on Twitter that I'd try to avoid this word agile, so I intend not to mention it again during this talk. Who am I? I have been an Agile coach. I'm still doing that. I still work as a Scrum coach. I labeled myself a trust artist when I became independent a few months ago because I see the lack of trust, especially the lack of trust people have in themselves, in their teams, in their ability to deliver. And Angel made a very great point that delivery is everything that counts, right? Delivering value, delighting customers, and proving that we can do it. That's the thing I care about. And how do we enable people to actually care about that at all, as well? In the end, it's about wholeheartedness. Is anybody of you familiar with Brené Brown and her research and talks about shame and vulnerability? Highly recommended TED Talk. Brené Brown, brown like the color, and Brené as you pronounce it. And she talks about wholehearted people. People who are able to admit fear and still go on and embrace the uncertainty that this century is delivering in abundance. And uncertainty makes human beings afraid. That's an evolutionary thing. A friend of mine recently came up with a word that I love, politics tax. And it's defined as the percentage of time and energy that people in an organization spend on covering their ass instead of focusing on results. What do I mean by covering my ass? It's like making sure I look good, making sure that problems are somebody else's problems, making sure that I always have somebody to blame. This is what we need roles for, by the way, right? And processes. To make sure that there's always somebody we can blame. There's no other reason for roles and processes, in my opinion. Creating the right lie so that everything is looking good. Mark Löffler coined the term watermelon reporting. Reporting where on the outside everything is looking green. In my experience, organizations spend a hell of a lot of time and energy on doing that instead of delighting their customers. I invite you to stand up. I want to do a little poll. To get an idea of the people in the room and the organizations you work in, of the politics tax in your organizations. So if you think, could you all stand up so that I can have a kind of count? Thank you. If you think that the amount of time and energy spent on lying, on looking good, on politics is less than 20%, then you may sit down. Okay. That's more than I had in the project management camp 2 weeks ago in Berlin. It's about half of the people sitting down now. So less than 50%. Less than 80%. Good. 10% of the people in the last conference were still standing up when I asked to sit down if the level is less than 80%. So 50 to 80% is my average. In organizations of a significant size is like 3 people or more. There's a more explicit thing called fear tax. I recently talked to a CEO of a 250 people organization, and after a long conversation, I asked him, how much time do you think your fellow managers spend on dealing with fear? And he said 50%. And I think this is something that we want to change, even if it's only 20%. If people are afraid at work, that's not good, right? So, Agile talked about survival. And my experience is that when survival is at stake, then people have a sense of urgency, which is the key factor to start a transformation, to really have sustainable and significant change in an organization or in your own life, right? People talk about stopping to smoke, starting a diet, whatever, and they will only actually do that if they really feel a sense of urgency. Who remembers a scene in a movie or a book where a main character says, "Fly, you fools"? Okay, you probably will with a picture. The interesting bit of that story was not told in the movie or in the book. And it's this guy's transformation, which is really amazing, right? You remember when he comes back? And he says, "I went through fire and water," etc., etc. The whole quote didn't fit on the slide. So what I'm interested in is what enables human beings to really change, to really transform, and what enables us as people in organizations that aspire change, that aspire a different way of being, that aspire a totally different way of working, where we have fun and can actually have fun by delighting people, making people's lives better, changing the world. And what I'm interested in is stories. Human beings are storytelling animals. We differentiate it from the other animals by starting to imagine different possible futures, by starting to sharing things that happened in the past. First, we use our hands and feet and drawings, and then we develop language. So our brains got bigger to learn the language, etc. We started to tell lies, which is a creative way of telling a story, which needed a bigger brain. We started to develop the sense to detect lies, which again made our brains grow. And we love stories so much, stories like The Lord of the Rings or stories like Star Wars, because we identify and resonate with characters. I do think that, I frame that as a question. Who of you has been in a situation where you felt you needed to do something and you didn't dare to? You saw a need for somebody to step up and say something, do something, and you said, "Oh, can please somebody else do that?" This is how he felt, right? When he was facing the Dark Lord and when he was trying to fight for the good. And there had been years and years, probably decades, when he was hiding in that village, not kind of answering to his calling, not doing what he knew he needed to do. And this is a feeling we resonate with. It's the same with Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings. Many good stories have this kind of character because it's so familiar for all of us. Storytelling is much more than just resonance. Storytelling is helping us to identify who we are on many, many levels. So when we look at culture, when you look at your company, when you look at your family, when you look at our nation or your nation, we feel at home where we know the stories. We feel at home, we feel we belong somewhere when we share a common set of stories, a common set of archetypes, a common set of images. Like in many places in the world, when I make this sign, people will understand what I mean. There are different stories attached to it. You might think of The Exorcist, you might think of the Bible, but it's a sign that everybody understands, and everybody feels, "Oh, Olaf is one of us because he knows that too," right? When we think about ourselves, when you try to identify who we are and who we want to be and how we want to be, it's all stories in our brains. And it's the stories we share and the feedback we get from others when we tell our story that enables us to grow and that enables us to form an identity. This storytelling exercise is what creates authentic connections between people, which enables other people to truly see us as we are, not the role, right? Not the coach, the coder, the tester, the boss, the employee, the husband, where we have these expectations, these shoulds and have tos, and all the coercive things that society and our own upbringing forces upon us. But when I tell a story from my life that's dear to me, then you will start seeing me as a human being. You will start identifying with me as a human being. And from that connection, powerful things can happen. This connection is the basis for transformation and the basis for healing, for getting over the fear, right? When I talk to you about what I'm afraid of, you are able to identify with that and to feel a connection and feel an urge to help me achieve what I need to overcome my fear. And this is how we see change in organizations. The effect, the outcome, is trust. And as I said in the beginning, trust is lacking in so many systems we deal with, right? Who of you has a system, be it at home, be it with a friend, be it at work, wherever, with another person but only yourself, where you can be truly honest and talk about anything that's on your mind? Wow, congratulations. Many people don't have that at all, which makes them very, very cornered, very afraid, and out of choice. And this is what we need to increase, right? Increase the authentic connections that give us trust so that we start daring taking a step forward. That we dare realize who we are, realize what we have and what we can do, and then start building it together. In organizations that have trust, you save a lot of time, right? If you don't need to lie, if you can honestly communicate about everything, you have a very, very high-speed communication. And it's not only about time, it's also about bandwidth. In a system with a high level of trust, we transfer much more meaning in our communication than in the less trustful, mistrusting context that we are kind of used to in companies and families and society and politics. It also increases loyalty. When we think about organizations and survival, we want to have loyal employees and we want to have loyal customers, right? In today's economy, if somebody offers the same service that you have for a different price, people will run away. If they have a connection to you, if they like you, they will be more loyal and they will tell you, hey, Olaf, could you improve this and that? Because I have this different opportunity, but I would really like to continue working with you and you need to improve, right? They will only tell you this if they have a connection. The interesting thing about value creation, creativity, innovation is that once we start trusting each other, once we start knowing more about each other, so that as a team, we have this great amount of knowledge about what people care about, what people's experiences are outside of work as well. We have this so increased set of options to identify problems, options to look at things from a different angle, options to bring in new ideas for different and new solutions. So a high-trust environment will give you speed, more bandwidth, more loyalty, and more value. This is why I'm so in favor of raising the level of trust in organizations. This is a very good-looking picture. And impact is a word that I really, really like. We want to make a difference. What do our customers want to achieve? Who of you thinks that an organization doing that is going to be successful in this century? Flip the coin, and you have the Henry Ford quote, "Had I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses." Right? This doesn't have anything about a connection. This doesn't have anything about innovation. And in my impression, in this century, that's not enough anymore. We want to delight customers. Oh, thank you very much. So we want to help our customers become different. Right? When I'm using my iPhone, there are certain applications that really make me a different person. For instance, because I can connect in ways to people that I like that were not possible before I had this device. There are competitors that do the same, but this is just an example. Apple doesn't, this is not about Apple being better than other things, it's just about, I have an iPhone, so this is my example. So how do we achieve that? And what's the thing that drives us forward in an organization? We want passionate people having fun at work, who are inspired. A CEO I've talked to has coined this phrase: I want employees with fire in their belly. And I want that fire to shine so that the customers see that we really, really care and that we really want to help them become burning too. Joshua Karievsky, an Agile guy from San Francisco, once said, Agile is about one thing only: enable our customers to kick ass. So whenever you hear anything about improvement and you don't see how it helps another person kick ass, don't do it. When we want to make that happen, when we want organizations with passionate people, the question is where to start. I noticed something very interesting about the metaphor of a bottleneck. When we talk about systems and improvements, we always look for bottlenecks, right? You've probably heard that, theory of constraints, etc. And have you ever noticed where at the bottleneck is located? Exactly. So if you want to transform an organization, start at the top. This is the most important learning I have about organizational change. Leaders go first. And I am about as confident about this as Vasco is about no estimates. Right? So Agile from the ground up is nice and well, it may be fun, it will not be sustainable. I've never, ever seen that be sustainable in any organization. If you want to have an organization that is truly embracing uncertainty, that is truly unleashing the potential of every human being in the organization, as what was the Japanese guy's name, Angel? Yeah, that guy. Matsushita. And I remember he said that in the 80s. So maybe it's time to start doing it. Right? A friend of mine, Niels Flagging, he says that management has been dead since 1970. Management was a great concept in 1911 when Taylor came up with the idea of paying some people to think and paying a lot of people, a little less, not to think. And that gave us scaling, that gave us wealth and growth and abundance of products, etc. And it stopped working when Toyota forbid their workers not to think at work in 1970. And management as a concept has been zombieing around all that time. We're still trying to make it work. 1.0, 2.0, etc., etc. I don't think that's a good path. I think we need to stop managing and start thinking and having fun at work. And leaders need to go first. They may ask for help, especially in their organization. This is not about selling my services as a coach, right? If you are leading a company and you are employing people, you're working in a network of people, ask them for help. Ask them how to deliver, to stay with Angel's goal. In my experience, or in my view of the world, there are three things that you need to know and to understand to make this happen. I'll cover only one of them in this talk. I'll happily talk about the others later, if you find me in the hall or somewhere. And these are better documented than the third one, so I'll do those very quickly. The first one is real options. Who's heard about real options? Okay, there's three principles. Options have value, options expire, never commit early unless you know why. What this gives you is a strong sense of, I need to make sure I have multiple options at all time. The worst position I can be in is the position where I don't have a choice. So it's about removing coercion from our systems. It's about being aware that a lot of the things we think we have to do, we should do, we must do, are in fact options. And it's about thinking about our language, thinking about our decisions, thinking about the possibilities, and identifying the valuable things to try in a complex and uncertain environment. That's what real options gives you. The second concept is complexity thinking. Who of you is familiar with Dave Snowden and the Kinevan model? Okay. It's about identifying where you are, making sense of your environment, living with ambiguity in a complex environment, in a changing environment, being able to use distributed cognition, multiple hats to identify a problem, multiple sensors in a network to spot things early, and about how to move between different systems, between different domains. Complexity is a very good thing for innovation and a very good thing for discovery of value. It's not a very good thing for scaling and actually cashing in the value. So you want to move from complex to complicated and simple space to actually scale your business and make money. And to know how to deal with that, to have the right tools, to know how to run safe-to-fail experiments, etc. That's the second important concept. The third thing, and this is the one I'll be talking about a little more, is temenos. Temenos is a Greek word for a sacred place. And C.G. Jung, the Swiss psychologist, he coined it as a term for the place in ourself, or in a human being, where our self is growing. So he had this concept of an ego, the external facade that we create during our lives, and the self that grows inside. And he had the theory that to grow as a human being and to be whole, I talked about wholeheartedness earlier, as a human being, you need to integrate the two, and you need to identify and grow your true self. And temenos was the term he coined for the place in ourselves where that self is growing. A friend of mine from the States, Sirajuddin, he created a personal and team development workshop, laboratory, where through storytelling, people can identify together who they are, where they want to be, and then find the vision that we need to navigate through uncertainty. So when you put the three things together, real options gives you the tools to identify the valuable ideas, to identify the valuable things to try. Complexity thinking gives you the right mindset and the frame to run the safe-to-fail experiments and to know how to do risky things without losing your option for survival. And temenos gives you the confidence to know where you are, who you are, what you can do, and where you want to go. Temenos works like this. You start looking at your past and individually think about what has made me who I am. What are the key influences in my life, people, events, that have shaped me into the being that I am today? And we share this story in a group so that we have this resonance effect that I've been talking about earlier. When people talk about fear, when people talk about loss, when people talk about joy, we have this authentic connection. It's the most effective method I know to raise the level of trust in a group very, very quickly. And the fascinating thing that happens is when we tell these stories, especially in a group of people who've been working together for years and have all of these emotional wounds and scars, because that person has hurt me so often and he stood in my way for so often and he doesn't like me and he probably hates me, etc. This stuff melts down when we listen to each other's stories. And this is a very fascinating and very effective tool. The way this works, to make it a little more lively for you, is you take a piece of paper, flip chart or smaller, and you draw the key events and key influences in your life so that you have imagery to A, inspire your own reflection while you're doing this, and B, to support the storytelling. So that when people listen to your story, they can more easily follow and they can better remember what you tell them. The second thing that we look at in temenos is the different systems we operate in. When you look at your own life and the way you behave in different systems that you play in, that you act in, that you work in, then you will notice slight differences in your behavior between, for instance, yourself at work and yourself at home. If my phone would ring now and my wife would call me, then I would change my language. My voice would be about an octave higher. The behavior rules that I follow are totally different from the ones I have as a speaker at a conference. Dave Snowden calls this the crucial dimension of the complexity of human systems, that human beings are able to switch identities in seconds. And what happens in most people's lives is that we are not aware of that. Who has ever had a fight at home because of stuff that was still in your stomach from work? And who's been in a meeting at work still thinking about stuff that happened in traffic, a fight with your teenage daughter in the morning, whatever? Right? We always do this, and it drags us down. Right? Imagine a boss in a meeting, totally red in the face, steaming, and everybody in the meeting will think, oh shit, I didn't send him that email, oh shit, my project is late, whatever. The meeting will be a total waste of time, and if we give him the chance to switch these systems explicitly, for instance, by checking in at the beginning and saying, I'm so angry, and I'm so glad that I'm here now and we can do something productive now, that everybody would know this is off the table, this is a clean slate. It's English for reiner Tisch, for those of you who are not familiar with the term. And this is the second element of Temenos, where we look at the present, where we look at the different systems we act in, and we try to make sense of our behavior and how we fail these systems and how these systems fail us. So we create a kind of picture, for instance, about our team. How do I think I don't meet the expectations of my team? And how does my team not meet my expectations? And to have a conversation in a team around this is a very, very interesting thing. It's like you look in the mirror and you're not really liking what you see. And to do that together is a really strong driver to, hey, we can make that better. And that's the next thing. We have this conversation together so that each of us, in his struggles, in his emotions, is guided by the group. Our history is individual. Our lives are highly different. What we experience is different. But the emotions we feel are universal. So when I tell you a story about a struggle that I have in my life, a situation where I don't dare to do something that I know I want to do, then many of you, many of the people in my team, or many of the people in my family will resonate with that. And maybe something happens like, oh, I have a situation like that too. And if you can do that, if you can dare to go one step forward and do the thing you want to do, then maybe I can do that too. And that can be a very strong driver, a strong force for change in a team. With this shared knowledge about our individual pasts and about the individual struggles in the present and our options to improve, we each go into future mode. Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? What's my personal vision? So that instead of just trotting along, just letting time hit us, letting uncertainty hit us, we can design our future intentionally. We can actually think about what we want. Jim McCarthy has the nice quote that a want is a baby have. So it's something that you already have, you maybe not realize, you maybe not trust it completely, but as soon as we start saying what we want, sharing that with other people and asking them for help, our chances to get it actually increase. Who knew? Right? This is not really surprising, but most of us don't do that. The final step in a Temenos is a shared vision in a team. So imagine you have been sitting for a day in a room and all walls are covered in drawings, right? Each of you has drawn a picture about their past, has drawn a picture about their present, has drawn a personal vision, lots of icons, lots of graphic vocabulary, and then you meet at the table with a big canvas of paper and you draw all of these things together. And you have this canvas of who you want to be as a team, with all of this imagery, all of this reference to the stories that you shared, And that gives you momentum to actually move forward. And this is something that I've experienced twice now, once in a team I was part of, and once in a company last week, where we did that with a team that was in a very frustrated situation and who are now really moving forward, trying to work lean startup-y in a hierarchical, classical old organization, which is not much fun if you've tried that. So, to summarize, Temenos gives you identity, realizing who you are, where you are, what you can do. It gives you a sense of this archetype, like who am I, how can I be the hero of my story, or who's the hero of my story? And to have these imageries from stories that we all share is very powerful. You have the raised level of trust, and you have the authentic connection. So you can communicate faster, you can communicate more effectively with more bandwidth, etc. And through the increased loyalty in the team, you can increase the loyalty within your organization or to your clients. And to sum up my 3 concepts that I think you need to know to change an organization, change yourself, change where you are going, and actually start a transformation at the core, not talking about processes, not talking about organizational structures, not talking about all of these technical stuff, which becomes so much easier when this is solved. Understand complexity, stop being afraid of it, and understand the frames and the tool sets that enable you to confidently move in uncertainty. Use real options, be aware of the value of having a choice, be aware of all the coercion that is built into our system and try to reduce that, try to remove that. And using Temenos or a similar method, the method is not as important as the vision, that you truly know who you are and where you want to be. And that will make you successful. I do these Temenos workshops together with Christine Neithardt. Some of you might know her. She's been active in the Agile community for a while, similar to me. There's an open Temenos in end of October in Berlin, one possibly in Munich in December. Just ping me or look at our website. And we're looking for early adopter organizations who want to try Temenos with a leadership team, with a development team, with a department where you think a lack of trust is really something that we could look at and we could start changing. Questions? Yeah.
What's the most critical challenge you experience when people are approaching you about these concepts? That trust from the senior management, or?
Well, if people are approaching me about this topic, then the main obstacles have already been overcome. Because if you realize you have a problem with trust, and you realize you're going to ask for help for this specific thing, then you're kind of farther ahead than most people in most organizations. Are you talking about one person in an organization, and then like what is needed in the organization to make it happen?
No. What I'm wondering is that this idea is a pretty groundbreaking idea in some organizations.
Yes.
So the question for me is, what is needed for the organization to come to the point to come to you and say, okay, we now want the workshop in our organization? So
I think it's a sense of urgency. Okay. So if the leader of the organization is feeling like Gandalf, run while it's still safe, then this is probably going to work. If you feel there's so many other things you want to try first, this is similar to what Angel said, right? Oh, not now, we're so busy now, right? We'll do this when we have time. If the people in your organization are still saying that, then you're not close enough to the cliff yet. And it's like, Kotter has written this book about transformation, and I believe he's totally right. If you don't have a sense of urgency, if you don't have this like fear of survival, a true transformation in the organization will probably not happen. At least I've not seen that happen or heard of any story.
I somehow do question your approach of start with the leaders. And you claim yourself to be a culture hacker. And culture hacking and making subversive things in a company to at least initiate change is something that starts on a grassroots. And I think this is needed because you also talked about the past and future of management.
Yeah.
And starting with leaders in a traditional organization means starting with the protagonists of a different mindset, something you want to shift from.
Okay.
And in my opinion, if you start with the leaders, for instance, on doing Scrum or Agile transformation, most of the time you end up in doing yet another process and doing these I don't know, child games.
I'm not talking about Scrum or Agile or Lean or whatever. I'm talking about transformation of the culture. And I do think that needs to start with the leaders, but that doesn't mean it can't be inspired by people in the organization starting to hack the culture. So what I do when I'm called into a team or into a department, a smaller part of the organization, is try to do something that gets attention, right? And when I go in and I work with, let's say, a software development leader or a software development manager, and he said, okay, I want to do Agile in my team. I will ask that person who assigned you a budget to hire me, and I will go with him to that person and ask him, are you aware that my presence will make some things happen that both of us cannot predict?
Suppose an organization that doesn't have any budget for bringing external persons in since years.
Okay. As I said, this is not
How
about...
would you start?
This is not about... well, you can start hacking the culture from the inside, and you can definitely start doing Agile in a team, and you can start being Agile in a group as long as there's some sort of umbrella saving you. So I've seen a lot of managers struggling with enabling their teams to be Agile, while still pretending to the outside they are just working. At some point that will break, right? And only if they are really successful and the success starts being visible to the management, and then management says, oh, this Agile thing is cool, I want that everywhere. And then you're done. Unless you then start with the top and start explaining, okay, if we really want to change this organization, then your behavior needs to change first. Because the behavior of the people at the top is a good or bad example to the behavior of everybody in the organization, right? And if the people at the top care more about covering their ass than about delighting the customer, then that will be the example for most of the people, and especially for those laggards that Angel talked about. So the people resisting change are, in my experience, people that know that it doesn't work this way. And I don't believe that they need to go. I believe they need to be embraced, because if those people start changing, then the rest is easy. More questions? I'm not aware of time, so Stefan, tell me if we're done.
Just 5 minutes.
Okay.
No more questions?
How do you address the fear some people might have thinking about themselves and who they are and who they want to be? I think this is a wall you have to break through.
Depending on the level of trust in the system, you need to start with certain steps. So the beautiful thing about this Temenos model is that you can take parts and make them very, very simple and very, very small. For instance, this personal vision exercise in this deep dive into all of those feelings, etc., is quite a big step. But if you have a retrospective, and as a check-in exercise, first thing in your retrospective, you just give a piece of paper to everybody and say, just take 5 minutes, imagine how you would like yourself to be in this team if everything was perfect, and then you start sharing that. So you limit the scope. It's not about my life, it's only about me and the team. You limit the time, and you just let people share, like, how would I love to be on this team? And this is what everybody can relate to. And when they say, oh, this was a cool exercise, then the next time you could say, hey, let's do this influence map thing. Like your history in this team, again, very small, right? Limit the boundaries so that people feel comfortable to talk about this. And for all of these exercises in any setting, we will always say, only share what you want to share, right? There's this comfort zone, adventure zone, and danger zone. So you want to be a little bit adventurous, because if you totally stay in your comfort zone, you probably won't learn much. So talk about the things that you still feel okay sharing, but that, that are not like scaring you, right? So if you feel totally embarrassed by the stories you tell, then that will probably also not lead to a great deal of learning. So play it safe and take small steps. Like every other development, we know that incremental and iterative development works. So same goes for trust. Yeah, you don't need to jump down the cliff into the sea in one go. You can create a set of stairs.
So in fact, it's more about storytelling. You say storytelling is do it and then it will happen.
Yeah, that's
imagine a company. There's one agile team, one team doing Scrum and doing it well. The second one doing the same job as good as the other one. The leader says, what you are doing, these Scrum things, I don't know how the name is, just do it. And tell the rest of the company, do it. And they, what are they doing? Oh, why and how and why shall we do like they did? I don't like them.
Yeah.
Maybe they're
sure. If they are successful,
what shall we do?
We are not
shall
successful.
We tell stories to each other?
It's an interesting question. I haven't thought about this specific setup, but what I'm just making up is if you bring these people together in a room and you, for instance, do a little bit of storytelling around like how did working this way change me at work. So a lot of people I've met who after working for a while in an agile team, hear from someone like, oh, you're coming into work with a smile. You didn't do that a year ago. What happened? Right? And if people share those stories, then the other people will like, oh, I'm still envious, but if I'm honest to myself, I want that too. Another thing that I could imagine these people to do is maybe form smaller groups and maybe do this clean slate exercise where you talk about what works for me in this system and what doesn't work for me in this system. Because in every team, no matter if it's good or bad from the outside, everybody will still struggle with something. So doing this together will lead to a joint understanding of, hey, this is not perfect. Yeah? From the outside, it looks different, and they are having more fun. Maybe they are more productive, but they are still struggling, and they are also still human beings like us, right? So that everybody sees, okay, maybe on different steps of the path, but we are both on a path, and we both want to go in the same direction, right? We both want to do something with meaning, with purpose, with a sense of fulfillment, etc. Because in the end, I think everybody wants that. Most people just don't realize because they don't think they deserve it. So create a container, create a context where people can start talking about what they actually want. And that usually resolves a lot of those doubts and impediments in our hearts. A nice quote comes to my mind, which I would like to close, because I think our time is over.
Yep.
A guy from the UK recently told me, the difference between effort and results is 18 inches. The distance from your head to your heart. Thank you.